Senator Simpson. Just kidding.
Yeah. No kidding. What'd I ever do to you?
Congressman Mike Simpson, how are you, sir?
Good to be with you.
Good to have you back. This is, again, an ever-evolving conversation with you. After our last conversation, I was very fortunate. Thank you for helping me get that tour at INL. It was fantastic. 2-day tour, going around with Liza. Shout out Liza. She's great. And seeing the real science that's being done at INL and then understanding the history of the commercial nuclear fleet and its origins at INL was wild.
Yep.
And since 1949, when INL really started getting going, we've had these great booms and then these incredible drop-offs with enthusiasm and desire to continue nuclear research, especially for nuclear power.
Right.
Where do you see this going at this point? Because nuclear is a gigantic thing. Obviously, this administration is very hot on nuclear. Very much wants to, I think it's double the nuclear output by 2050. So we only have 25 years, and these are big projects. What do you think the federal interest is in continuing to support research at INL and continuing to build out, these small modular reactors and whatnot?
Well, I will tell you that I think the future of nuclear energy in this country, and in fact in the world, is huge. A lot of organizations, when I first got into Congress, there was a lot of organizations, a lot of people they were pretty much against nuclear energy. In fact, if you remember when AOC and Markey from the Senate introduced the Green New Deal, it excluded nuclear, said no nuclear. And they realized, that won't work. So they took that out of it. But that was kind of the attitude. Now public is accepting nuclear. And if you believe that climate change is real, and I do, it's changing. Go outside today, Right. It's changing over the years.
And this is distinct from who's changing it or why it's changing. Yeah. Can we just agree that it's getting a little bit hotter? Yeah. Can we all just get on the same page?
Yeah.
Right.
If you're gonna address decarbonize the atmosphere, nuclear power is the thing that's going to do it, because you need that base load.
Right.
You can't have intermittent power. I just talked to someone the other day who is into the data center stuff that needs incredible amounts of power. And they told me that they need power 99.9999% of the time. So you can't have intermittent power. When the sun goes down, guess what? You don't produce a lot of power from solar batteries, from solar panels and stuff. When the wind's not blowing, they're good adjuncts and that kind of stuff, but they're not the base load that you need. Nuclear power is going to be what's going to do it. And the INL is going to be at the center of that. When President Trump made 4 executive orders, I think it was 4, on nuclear power and moving forward with nuclear power, the only lab he mentioned by name was the Idaho National Lab. And this is why it's the lead nuclear lab in the country. And they are going to be the place where they're going to demonstrate some of these new advanced design reactors and so forth. And I think the future of the Idaho National Lab and employment at the Idaho Lab is going to be tremendous.
Everything that I'm hearing from people very much mirrors that. And again, we have an enormous data center and just energy problem in the state of Idaho now, Southwest Idaho. Yep. Idaho Power, I believe the residential rate increase is right around 17%. And that was approved by the Public Utility Commission. I actually have Ed Lodge, the president of the Utility Commission, coming on to talk about this, as well as somebody from Idaho Power, because the demands on our power grid are they're going to exponentially increase. Director Wagner yesterday from INL said it's going to be a historic increase, right? Like we've never seen anything like this. And again, it's not, hey, we have more air conditioners at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening running. It's literally, no. Facebook never turns off, right? Like the Google never stops.
Well, what's the amount of power that Micron's going to take with these new fab facilities that they're building? It's going to take a lot of power. That's just the reality. In fact, Wagner told me one day, this a couple of months ago when we were talking, he said, the challenge for the future of the economic growth in this country is not going to be finding the capital to invest in new things. It's going to be energy. And that's going to be the limiting factor. So we need to produce a lot more energy than we're producing. And I'm stunned at the amount of energy it takes for a data center to operate and stuff. Right. That's why we had a conference here that was sponsored by the Nuclear Communities Alliance or something like that. And I spoke at it, and they had a lot of people there, mayors, county commissioners from all across the country. And I asked him, I said, if somebody came in and said, we want to build a data center in your community or outside your community, could you deliver the power for us? Nobody can. That's why they're looking at having these data centers of actually building their own nuclear reactors, the small modular designs or the advanced designs that they own that power the data center. It's amazing how much power they take.
Right. It's tremendous. Throughout my entire adult life, there's always been talk about solar, right? And we had those classic examples of enormous federal subsidies going out to, like Solyndra and whatnot. Some have worked out well, obviously, and some have not. But the argument was like, hey, the argument I heard was, hey, we need to support this industry because, one, we're fighting against China, who's, doing whatever China's doing. And we also need to get this up off the ground so that it becomes, you reach real parity with customers and it's cheaper for them without any subsidy to buy solar panels as opposed to not. And okay, fine. Like, I don't know really anything about that. But the question is then, is that type of subsidy or federal support also available for this type of power? Because although you're not dealing with, millions of individual customers slapping up solar panels on the roof, all of those millions of customers are going to be gravely affected if we don't get something like nuclear providing more baseload power, because we have increasing power demands from industry that then trickle down, at least some people articulate, trickle down to residential payers. There
are nuclear power credits and things to help advance nuclear power. Some of the subsidies for wind and solar that were pretty good subsidies in the last several years have been reduced in the big beautiful bill and that kind of stuff. So we're trying to get an all of the above. Unfortunately, the previous administration was trying to get us away from oil and gas and things that we have a plentiful supply of and move us all to solar and wind power. And like I said, I'm not opposed to solar and wind power. If you want to put a solar panel on your roof and power your house that way, might be a good investment for you. And each individual will have to make that decision. But I will tell you, I had a guy from California. This was probably last spring, not this spring, but the year before. Came in and was talking to me, and he'd bought a EV, bought a Tesla. And he said he'd parked it, and overnight it would charge. He'd plug it into his house, and it would charge overnight. He said over the next 2 or 3 months, there was several other people in his community that bought EVs. And he said, it won't charge overnight now, because they don't have the transmission to get it to the houses and the availability of power. If the world went the way that Gavin Newsom went, and you wouldn't have gas-powered cars in California, and everybody was driving a EV, you wouldn't be able to power those cars. So it's a huge transformation, but getting the power, creating the power, and getting it on the grid is very important. One of the other important things is, right now, if you build a huge, either a nuclear facility, hydro facility, something like that, you got to have transmission lines to get that power to where it's being used. With small modular reactors, with the micro reactors and those types of things, you can build them much closer to where the energy is needed, so you don't have the big transmission problems that you do with the standard power that we have now.
Right. For instance, Lava Ridge, right? It's not like you could just transport the Lava Ridge windmill project to wherever you want. They had to generate the power right there. But again, to your point, with the small modular reactors, you're looking at like 40 acres or something. It's not a gigantic behemoth. It's very, very well contained, especially with the molten salt reactors, and that they have these incredible safety mechanisms. But again, like I totally get what you're saying.
You know who's most interested in these SMRs? Or not the SMRs, but the micro reactors and stuff? The military. We lost more people in Afghanistan and in Iraq by transporting fuel to forward operating bases that hit an IED or something like that. We lost a whole lot of soldiers that way. Well, they look at this as, hey, we take a micro reactor, we set it down, it powers the base. When we leave, we pick it up and take it with us. Don't have all those transports and stuff. So and if you look at Alaska, how do you get power to native villages that are miles and mountains away from anybody and stuff, Right. Not having those transmission problems is huge. So I really do think this is the future of energy production in this country. And right now it's nuclear energy produces, 20-25% of the power used in this country. I think you'll see it substantially more than that over the next decade, 2 decades.
When you're talking about nuclear, one of the reasons INL was a specific site that was viable is that it had an enormous amount of water, right? Yep. We had a lot of elbow room, not a lot of people wandering around, and then a huge source of water underneath. And again, the new technology does not need the same kind of water resources, right? Like you have a lot of different things that have changed, but the water resource in Idaho has become more and more and more scarce. Yep. It's my understanding that some industries have actually started purchasing, and when they really need to, purchasing farmland to get the water rights, and then just let the growing land go foul. To that end, Idaho is, for our own benefit, a great ag state, right? That's industry that we have, and we employ, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people within that sector. But also it lends food security to the United States as well, because we don't have as many robust and international supply chains that are required to deliver food and sustenance. To that end, do you think that there is federal desire to help secure more water for the Idaho agricultural production?
Secure more water in what way?
So that's a great question, right? So you have issues with, say,
God produces water.
God produces water, but can we grab it, right? So secure more water. When last year we had 600,000 acre feet of water that we had to let go down the river and go into the ocean because we didn't have surface water storage mechanisms. Right. Now, we are investing obviously heavily in recharge sites, which are awesome, and you have seepage sites and you have injection well sites. Those are fantastic. But surface water storage for things like the Teton Dam, right? These are things, the large scale projects that the United States has largely stepped away from in the last, 4 or 5 decades. Teton Dam, obviously was a horrible, horrible incident, but very rare, right? Yep. Do you think that there's a desire or a will or a willingness to start exploring a collaboration between the federal government and states like Idaho to say, hey, we supply food here, man. Like, this is really, it's not just important for me because, I make my living this way. It's important for all of us.
Yeah, I think there is. Idaho and the Idaho legislature has been actively involved in trying to increase our water resources by saving water that instead of just flushing it down the river. And we do it for a variety of reasons. But recharging our aquifer, we have both surface water and we have groundwater. Yes. And the groundwater in our aquifer that we have, the Snake River Plain aquifer, is huge, but it's been going down. And consequently, you see conflicts between surface water and groundwater users, and also between those that have senior water rights and those that have junior water rights. And if you look up at the upper Snake River Valley where I live, they're the more junior water rights. You get down to the Twin Falls area, they're the more senior water rights. So when we have water restrictions, we start to have water wars between the users in the upper Snake River Valley and stuff, and whether they're going to be shut off or not. That's a issue that is going to fight, the old saying that whiskey is for drinking and water's for fighting. Yeah, that's pretty much it is. We live in a desert. That's the reality. So we need to be we need to be sure that we secure every water we can, every drop of water we can, as we're in this. But we need to increase the aquifer by doing recharge. When we have excess water, we could do recharge. Storing in facilities, you could look at building the Teton Dam again or something like that, building new capacity to store, or increasing the capacity of dams that we already have. They've talked about, I think, at Lucky Peak, adding another 10 feet to the top of it, or whatever.
Anderson Ranch as well.
Yeah, Anderson Ranch, some of those. You could do those kind of things to secure more water, and I can't remember the name of them, but there's another dam that has been talked about for years and years over in southwestern Idaho here. I can't remember the name of what it was, but we ought to explore all of those possibilities. We shouldn't be sending water down the river for reasons that have dubious purposes.
Right. Or we just, not even a dubious or malicious intent at all. It's just, hey, we don't have anywhere to put it.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's coming off in the, spring, and we just can't grab it. Is that a burden that Idaho will, do you think, have to shoulder by itself?
No, I think that the Pacific Northwest is going to have to re-examine how we use water in the Pacific Northwest. And the decisions we make now are going to be what Idaho and the rest of the Pacific Northwest is going to look like in the next 25, 30, 50 years. So it's important what we make. We send 487,000 acre feet of water up to that much down the river every year that we can't use because of what's called the Nez Perce Agreement to flush salmon smolts over the dams that are in the state of Washington. I question the wisdom of that. We've done it for a number of years. It hasn't worked in restoring salmon runs, so why are we doing it? And that's a debate we ought to be having. But I think that agreement runs out in like 2033 or something like that. So that's a re-examination that we'll have to look at that. You notice that JFK was at the Nez Perce tribe just recently, and he talked about restoring the foods that they traditionally ate, the tribes and stuff, and that helps their health and stuff. It's the best way to attack the diabetes epidemic that is in Indian country and stuff. And he talked about bringing salmon back in and stuff. So I mean, it's a debate that's going to happen over the next several years, and it's one we started a few years ago. And I got my rear end handed to me on a couple of occasions. That's okay, but it's a debate we need to have. What we're going to do for the future. But water is a huge issue in the Pacific Northwest.
Bringing up RFK, he recently, again, as you said, did visit, and there's an interesting movement and conflict with, a lot of issues, especially around water. We saw, I can't remember, it was like 6 months ago or something with astronomical fires throughout the country, and some national legislators saying like, hey, where are the cloud seeders? Like, where are the magical meteorologists? Like, just make it rain. It's like, oh my God, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. And then you see flooding in Texas, and everybody's like, oh my God, it was the cloud seeders. It's like, oh my God, it doesn't work that way, right? So you have all of these problems around, and then RFK also saying, hey man, look, here's the problem. Like, we need to stop. Some people are making calls for cloud seeding for health reasons. Cloud seeding has been a part of the Pacific Northwest.
Sure it has.
Just the West. I mean, California and has been, state that shall not be named, has been doing cloud seeding for decades and decades, since I think the 40s. So this is a problem that is now, the water scarcity problem has also led into health concerns and misunderstandings about this. Obviously, you have states like Tennessee that are starting to ban these things completely. Yeah. What do you think the right answer is? Do we continue engaging in things that have quality scientific backing and do a better job explaining them to people? Do we just find different ways to produce water? What do we do?
I think you're, you do things that have good scientific backing. The other thing that we're doing a lot more of, is desalinization of water in the ocean along the coasts and stuff. Right. Communities are starting to use that. But I'll tell you, the thing I'm looking at the strongest is several years ago, probably 15 years ago or so, I was in southern Idaho. Mm-hmm. And I was meeting with a bunch of ag people talking about the ag bill and a few things. And they were in a semicircle out in front of me and stuff. And I was talking. There was one guy that was sitting in the middle. And he was sitting there all the time I was talking about, like, he's sitting like this, And we got to the end. We were asking questions and stuff. And I said, you look like you got something you'd like to say. He says, well, maybe not here. I said, well, go ahead. I said, that's going to be okay. And so he said, and this was the year that they had the Olympics in Salt Lake City.
Gotcha.
And he said, what are you going to do about the weather? And, what do you want me to do about the weather? And he said, well, he says, I have it on good authority that the Air Force has developed 2 radio frequencies where they can control the weather. And that's why all the snow is going down south where Salt Lake, where the Olympics is, and we're not getting any snow up here. And, I mean, what do you say? I kind of scratched my head and said, well, I'm not sure.
You say, let's call the Air Force.
Yeah,
that's what you say.
I'm not sure I really believe that, but I'm going to check that out with the Air Force, because it was kind of funny. And all the other farmers, when they're walking out, they said, don't worry about him. He thinks the Russians landed in the mountains up above his place last week. So it was kind of.
But did they?
No. People have some. They're
trying to find out what's going on.
I'm trying to find those radio frequencies that the forest or that the Air Force has.
Yeah, man. What a thing. So bottom line is, look, we gotta although it is popular, very popular right now, to say this is a terrible practice and they are killing all of us. The bottom line is, like, listen, if you have something to show that, awesome, come forward with it. But if you don't, then, we just got to go with what we know.
Well, it's like, and we get phone calls, still get phone calls. Used to get a lot more, I think, from contrails. The clouds that airplanes make, jets make when they go through the air. And that's a scientific thing. It's not, but they believe that the federal government is trying to put chemicals in the air to
either block out the sun or
to treat us for various things, make us compliant and stuff. But there's people that really believe that. And because they'll show you a picture that says, see, this doesn't come out of the engine and stuff. Oh no, it comes out of the tip of the wing and stuff. It is, there are conspiracy stuff all over the place, and you have to fight off some of them.
Yeah, gotcha. So again, coming back to the water, away from that, what do you think the relationship should be with the Bureau of Reclamation in Idaho? Like, is this something that they're willing to kind of come back to the table and start talking about, or do you think it's something that Idaho would really have to wait for someone like you or Representative Fulcher to start?
Oh, I think the Bureau of Reclamation is always willing to talk about this. They have a huge job out here, and you have both the Bureau of Reclamation and the Army Corps of Engineers that build dams for different purposes,
sure,
and stuff. Bureau of Reclamation is sitting there looking at what do you do with Hoover Dam and Glen Canyon Dam right now, where the water is so low. The Colorado River, they're going to have. You think we're going to have a problem? I will tell you that Southern California, Arizona, Southern Utah, New Mexico, Nevada, they're going to have a huge problem with the lack of water. They're going to have to stop producing power if they get much more drop in the levels of Lake Powell and stuff. And that is a huge problem. But you look back at it, some of it was man-made problems in that they overestimated the amount of water that came down the Colorado River. People have questioned whether we're over-appropriated on our Snake River. We might be. I don't know. But it's a question that needs to be looked at.
Gotcha. And for the Army Corps of Engineers, what role would they potentially play in preserving Idaho water?
Well, the Army Corps of Engineers runs the dams on the Columbia River, the 4 on the lower Columbia River and the 4 on the lower Snake River and stuff. Those dams are more flood control dams than they are dams to save agricultural water and that kind of stuff. Army Corps the Bureau of Reclamation is more into the saving water, building dams for agricultural purposes and that kind of thing. The Army Corps is for other reasons and stuff, for safety and
Gotcha.
For flood control and stuff. So, but the biggest construction company in the world is actually the Army Corps of Engineers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they do a lot of dam building.
Well, I think the estimates for the Teton Dam, I think, were, last I heard, something like $1.2 billion.
Yeah.
And for the amount of water that it would save, even on an average year, because you're going to have some big years and some down years,
Yep.
Being able to have that essentially bridge in the dry year season so that we don't lose ag ground seems to be something that people are really, really interested in.
Here's an interesting question for you. Would you be better if you had that excess water, putting it into the aquifer, if you could recharge it in the aquifer, or building a dam and storing it in a reservoir?
I think it depends where the reservoir is, right? Because if the reservoir is farther downstream, then it's not going to do much good to the people that are upstream, right? I also think it depends on where the groundwater is versus the surface water rights, right? So I think the combination really comes down to you need ample surface versus groundwater. And even if we built the dam for surface water storage right now, those are going to be the junior water rights, the day it's built. Yeah. So the answer is well, it depends, right?
It does depend. The reason I asked the question is,
the salmon would be happier if it was the aquifer.
If you look at it, if you recharge, use water and recharge the aquifer, it doesn't evaporate. It's underground. If you put it in a reservoir, you know what the second biggest usage of water out of Lake Powell and Lake Mead are? Evaporation. So you're putting it in an area that evaporates greatly in the atmosphere and stuff, versus putting it underground in the aquifer. It's a combination of both. You're right,
I get
but
what
you
you're
need
saying,
to consider you need to consider those things. That's why they're trained in California, particularly, but up here to some degree, we're taking canals and stuff and covering them.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
And that takes some money also.
Do you think the federal government wants to help pay for covering canals?
Yeah, they do.
Oh, God bless it. Who do we call?
Yeah.
Who do we? Because look, I'm not in ag. I'm really worried about it. And look, you were bringing up ridiculous things that, regarding power and whatnot. I lived through that.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of the things people talk about on TikTok or other, it's no. I saw it with my own ears. I got the text messages from the state saying hey, turn off your, drives. They're like, okay, you can no longer buy a gas water heater. You can no longer, like, we're going to phase out gas automobiles. And at the same time, turn off all your electricity because we don't have enough power. And we're paying $800 a month for electricity. And like, I had 2 rounds of solar panels. I had 2 Tesla backup batteries. I had all this stuff. And I still couldn't turn on my air conditioner when the power went out. And like the sun is blocked out from the fires. Like, it was hell. Okay. Like I was living in hell.
I know.
So I'm really worried about this, because it has such wide implications, even if you're not in agriculture, and there are plenty of people that are affected by it. Like, we can't let our quality of life fall like that.
Yeah. And there are so many businesses that depend on adequate water supply, and you lose your job because they go out of business because they don't have adequate water supply. That's a problem.
Yeah, for sure. Congressman, I know today's a working day for you. We've covered a lot about water and nuclear. Is there anything that we've missed that you'd like to cover today?
Well, I think we've been doing some good things in Congress. If you look at the energy and water bill, which is primarily what we've been kind of talking about here, we're focusing on some of those things. And I will tell you that the energy and water bill that we passed out of the full committee, I think 2 weeks ago, is really, really good for the Idaho National Lab. So, and the chairman of that committee now, I used to be chairman for nine years, but it is now Chuck Fleshman from Tennessee. And he's very interested in Oak Ridge and stuff. And everybody wondered, does that mean that all the money's going to go to Oak Ridge? Now, he did a really good job of making sure that we have the resources at the Idaho National Lab to grow and develop and take on these new technologies that they're working on. It is, I always tell people, if you really want to question the future of this country, go visit one of our national labs sometime. Take a tour of it, and you will walk away. Those are my wow moments. They do some amazing things, not just at the Idaho National Lab, but at our other national labs. They're the major sources of research in this country, and they do some incredible things. And you could get the same wow that you got at the Idaho National Lab if you visited Oak Ridge, or if you visited PNNL at Hanford. They do some amazing things, but it was a good bill. And then last week we did the interior bill, which is the Forest Service, the BLM, all of those kind of things, funds of wildfires, PILT payments, Indian country, those kind of things, which is very important to Idaho. So we got that done. So when we get back, we're going to try to get them across the finish line before October 1st.
Oh my gosh. Excuse me. A tag on to the end of our last conversation, if I may. When we were last talking, the DOGE led by Elon Musk was still like in full swing. And I remember asking him, like, is this stuff real? You're like, yeah man, some of it's really real. But other people have since criticized, and they're like, look, it was a lot of fanfare. Like, there were some notable things that were kind of like, why are we doing that? Yep. But do you think that there was a lot of real, like, substantial savings that came after the recommendations? Because let's be clear, DOGE was only capable of making recommendations. Yep. They weren't holding the purse strings. Yep. Do you think that there was a lot of actual substantial good, or was it a lot of smaller programs like, see, we saved like $1.5 million on this ridiculous program, or some people think they're ridiculous and wherever? No,
they did some real good work, and it was important for us to see what they did. We did a rescission bill of $9 billion last week, or I guess we passed it last week. $9 billion, $8 billion of that was in the foreign aid area, where they were doing some just crazy stuff. I don't know of any American that would look at what they were doing and say that's a good idea. So we rescinded that money back, and some people think that DOGE or the administration just pulled that money back and it was unconstitutional. No, they did it the right way. They sent Congress the bill, say, we want to rescind this money, and then Congress debates it and passes a bill rescinding it. Right. That's the way it should be done. And they're going to send up more rescission bills over the next few months, I understand, on various things. Some of those I might agree with, some of them I might not agree with. But still, it needs to come to Congress. Congress will debate them. And I think we will probably approve most of what they talk about in their rescission packages. But OMB is trying to do some things also where they're saying we're going to impound funding. And that's funding that's been approved by Congress, by the House, the Senate, signed by the president. And then they're going to say, well, I don't think you should spend that money, so we're just going to impound it and not spend it on that. That's not their job. If they think we shouldn't be doing something, then they should tell us and we should pass legislation. they should follow the law. And I think impoundment is, well, in the case with Nixon, that case went to court and they decided that was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court did. So we'll see how that happens. I think OMB now wants to take it, Office of Management and Budget, wants to take it back to the Supreme Court because they don't think the Supreme Court rightly decided the case in 73 or 4, whenever it was.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. There will be some disagreements between Congress and between the administration, but for the most part, we're on the same page of trying to enact the promises that the administration made during the campaign. And frankly, the one big beautiful bill, that enacted, I think, like 23 of the executive orders that he put out, and it did an awful lot of what he said during the campaign that he wanted to do that people voted for. So I think we're off to a good start. The economy is doing well. Not for every single person. You can find somebody that the economy is not doing well for. But overall, the economy in general is doing really well. And you're seeing prices come down in certain areas. It was always the eggs are too high. The price of eggs. Right. Well, guess what? The price of eggs are down now. So they pick out something else. And,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, and same thing with the Dow, right? Everybody's like, it's going to go to 10,000. Now it's like back up to exactly where it was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And the tariffs that they're talking about were going to cause a recession. Like last March, guess what? Maybe he knew what he was doing, because other countries are coming to the table and negotiating agreements that are fair between the United States and those countries. And that's all he was trying to do, is get fair agreements in trade agreements. So it hasn't caused the economic disruption that a lot of the economists, the so-called experts, said that it would cause. I've come to believe that what used to be a joke is true, that the reason we have economists is to make astrology look respectable. And I can find an economist that will tell you just about whatever you want to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. Listen, I have more questions, but I don't want to keep you too long. I really appreciate you making the time, especially our third conversation here. Thank you for coming in, and let's do it again.
We'll do it again.
Right.
Thank you.